This is a 1974 Honda XL175. The XL series was Honda's off-road oriented street legal motorcycles. They came with everything you needed to have fun off-road, while still being street legal enough to be a mailman named John Travolta. The eagle-eye viewer may have already noticed that this particular XL175 looks like its owner forgot where he parked it sometime around 1981. Fast forward to 2024, and you have a naive, inexperienced me that just drove out of town for an hour to a random person's house because of a relapsed Facebook addiction. Overall, the purchase of this motorcycle was disappointing. No beautiful story about a man who owned it since new, always serviced at Honda, stored in a warm hyperbaric chamber its entire life. Instead, the owner was a professional bike flipper who was getting out of the business. He had no idea when the bike last ran, if it had spark, if it had compression, or if the motor was full of killer bees. I could tell my questions annoyed him, and when I asked if I could try to kick it over and at least hear it try to run, he let out a very long sigh and said it won't run. The gas has never been changed, the carb will be gummed up, the spark plug is probably fouled. Luckily, I brought a friend who knows way more than me and suggested we dribble a couple drops of gas under the spark plug and give it a kick. After another sigh, he let us try. After 10 minutes of trying, the bike actually stumbled and fired for a second, so I handed the money over. And honestly, it wasn't even that cheap. Classic Honda prices have gone up so much in the last few years, it's getting really hard to find a good deal. But everything looked to be intact on this bike, and it wasn't missing a lot of the expensive to replace parts that a lot of these bikes are. Once I got the bike home, I could start going through it and fully see what I had just purchased. This fuel tank has the ability to turn raw vinegar into an ExxonMobil natural disaster. This is what was left in the bucket after draining the tank. Actually, I had to repeat this process probably 10 times. I went through gallons of vinegar. Now I want fish and chips. If I did it again, I would probably just use muriatic acid, not on the fish and chips. After all the cleaning and replacing of gaskets I did on this petcock, it still leaked, so I just ordered a new one for $15. This is me learning that gas caps can come apart, something I did not know up until this moment. This isn't my first experience around XLs. My buddy had an XL100, and whenever we went camping or my bike was broken, I would always hop on his XL100. Yes, that is me, and yes, that was filmed on a literal potato. I love that little XL100, and I always knew I wanted one of my own. The more I removed from this bike and cleaned it up, the more I was impressed at just how intact everything actually was. I never found a single wire that had been cut or spliced, no modifications made to anything on the bike at all. It is all just as it was when it left the factory. I was starting to believe the odometer reading of 2,900 miles. Right up until I took the speedo cable out and saw that the inside of the cable was indeed broken. With that being said, I don't think this bike has a lot more miles on it than that. Believe it or not, this is the only bolt or screw that I had to remove using heat or force. Every other bolt and screw came out without issue. There are no strip bolts or screws. I honestly can't believe it. Please remember, Japanese bikes use JIS screws, not Phillips. My least favorite part of working on anything is always wiring, so I am usually very careful to take pictures and take the least amount of things apart as possible. On this bike, I was able to basically keep the entire harness intact and connected at the handlebars and headlight. And I was able to remove the whole thing as assembly with the harness attached. This made reassembly so easy. If you have ever wondered what fork fluid looks like after 50 years, well, have I got a treat for you. One thing I found very strange is what I was told to put in the forks for fork fluid. Everything I read in multiple locations said to use the same oil that the motor gets. In this case, 10W40, which I found very odd. I'm going to test out how it feels with that oil, and I may switch to a more familiar heavyweight fork fluid. Because of these low miles, I'm going to leave the motor untouched for now. I know this might be triggering to some people, but based on my experience with the XL100 and the absolute abuse they can handle, I'm hoping that this bike, being as unmolested as it is, that I can get the motor running good without having to do any internal work, because I am lazy and I just don't wanna.
XL175 motorways.
I went through every bearing on the bike and cleaned out and re-greased the areas around them. The front sprocket was badly worn and the chain was very sloppy, so both of those will be replaced. With the bike fully stripped apart, I take its greasy carcass to the nearest car wash. Remember, never pressure wash an engine. Also, remember to not leave your camera on the box of the truck and drive away with it still recording.
Did you survive?
I will be repainting the frame after I clean it thoroughly and wipe it with a wax and grease remover. I am spraying the frame and swing arm with a product called POR 15. I believe that POR 15 is primarily used as an undercoat product, but they make a gloss product that is sprayable and cures with a high gloss coat. It requires very little prep work, no sanding, no priming. Remember, I am lazy. In fact, all the instructions suggest that if you are coating a heavily rusted area, that you simply just knock off the large pieces of rust before spraying. The paint goes on sort of blotchy looking, but it smooths itself out and dries with a nice gloss finish. If you are kinda lazy and not that great at painting, I would recommend giving it a try. If you are spraying this product, it does require reducing. And when POR 15 is sprayed with the reducer, it is very toxic, so please use a mask with a proper filter in a ventilated room. I am not exaggerating here. And because this is designed as an undercoat product, it is made to take a beating. It holds up against scratches and abrasions much better than paint. The reassembly process is always very satisfying. When everything has been cleaned and prepped, it all goes together so nicely. To be perfectly honest, this bike has been an absolute dream to work on. Just run down enough to still be able to see transformation, but not so bad that I have stress-induced nightmares about broken, rusted, stuck bolts and butchered wiring harnesses. In fact, I have to keep reminding myself it's not usually this easy and fun. Don't go and buy 12 more, keep strong, keep away from Facebook Marketplace. There ended up being some pretty lengthy wait times because of parts that I needed to order. Honestly, I don't know what's taking them so long to get here. But eventually they did show up, and only half of them were the wrong parts. Oh well, brakes are for losers and quitters anyways. The wiring harness went back on easily, and I only had to reference my cell phone pictures a few dozen hundred times. It felt good to spend a few hours on the bike and see such a big change. I love these old Hondas for that. Simplicity at its finest. As the final pieces all went back on the bike, those intrusive thoughts started to find their way into my head. Did you remember to tighten all the bolts? Are you sure you connected the wiring properly? Why did you buy the bike that you barely got to see run? What if it won't start? What if the rod bearings is on its way out and you have a pile of garbage you just spent 4 months working on? What if your childhood dog that's been dead for 20 years really only loved you because you let him eat your leftovers right off the plate? With a new battery in the bike, I was happy to see that the brake light worked perfectly, but the headlight, signal lights, and dash lights showed no signs of life. Adding fuel to the bike revealed that the parts guy needs to relearn his fractions because a quarter is not equal to 3/8. But at least Honda doesn't charge $25 for a piece of fuel line that is the wrong size.
It's not quarter-inch line. It's 3/8.
And now for the moment I have been dreading since purchasing this bike. Did I buy a turd or a gem? I didn't film all the kicking that took place out of sheer embarrassment. The bike had all 3 ingredients needed for a long marriage: spark, fuel, and a garage full of air. Now, all I needed was some banging. That was all the motivation I needed to get the last few pieces wrapped up. This was also the first time I have ever successfully changed my own tires over. This has been a sore spot in my history for quite some time, so it felt good that I didn't break any beads or give up and go to a shop to have them change them for me. With the bike all back together, I wanted to stick close to my home for my initial ride, and luckily for me, there is a nearby construction site, where I could channel photos I saw of my dad from the 70s to try to make the 70s bike experience really complete. You'll just have to imagine the smell of decades worth of cigarette smoke on my jacket. One of the funner parts about older motorcycles is the routine for startup. It's just more involved than modern bikes. It's not always convenient, but it does add to the occasion and makes it feel that much more special. Now the bike isn't 100% complete. I still have the factory muffler, which is about 90% rust at this point, hence the noise. The air-fuel ratio is slightly off, and I imagine the Holy exhaust is not helping with this. And I forgot to properly mount the seat. But thanks to my buddy Kyle at Close Leather, he made me this beautiful belt which saved the day. The XL175 is a blast to ride. The size makes it easy to maneuver, and low seat height is a confidence booster. I am definitely happy with how all this turned out. But I do have a confession to make. Back when I was waiting for parts, I may have accidentally stumbled back onto Facebook Marketplace and bought another Honda XL. This time I picked up an actual XL100, just like we used to ride in the potato camera days. And boy oh boy, is this one minty. So now I'm in a bit of a pickle because I only have room for one. So do I keep the XL175 I just spent all winter rebuilding, or relive my past with the XL100? Let me know which one you would choose below. Thanks for watching the video. These take me a long time to put together, so if you liked it, let me know, leave a like and subscribe. I love you all and hope to see you on the next one.